Hello, Jerry Valdez here, and I have a demo for you. I've been using AI in my projects for a couple of years now, and I thought it might be helpful to some if I shared a short demonstration using it in a real software development workflow. I'm sure a lot of folks are familiar with leveraging AI, but hopefully some will find this useful. To start with, let me give a little more context. My main point and objective is to demonstrate one way I've leveraged AI. I'm going to keep things simple and straightforward, and I do recognize this is just one approach. There's going to be other ways depending on one's project needs and situation. The app I'm working with is a Flutter-based Android application called Inspector Pool. Right now it's in public beta, and I'm moving it to a version 1.0. So for this sprint, I'm doing something super light, just a small code change to bump that version number. It's simple, which makes it a good sprint to use for this demonstration, and the process is very similar to more complex sprints. For example, I recently introduced monetization, and those sprints are far more complex, but the process is basically the same. Here's a bigger picture to visualize how I approach a sprint. It really starts with capability mapping. First, I figure out what's needed. In this case, project planning, coding, and testing are the core capabilities. Then I map those directly to tools and technologies I'll use. I don't illustrate it here, but I'm also leveraging things like Agentic AI, vibe coding, and advanced prompting, and it's these that drive a lot of efficiency. In this sprint, I'm using Grok and Grok Build, but I also heavily use Claude and Claude Code depending on where I am with token usage. Both are equally effective tools, and I'll even mix them up as needed. I use Grok for a couple steps. Review the project roadmap, and then build a prompt for Grok Build. There's a connector that lets it work directly with my Google Drive where the roadmap file is located. And in previous sprints, I used Grok to help build that roadmap, which is basically like brainstorming with the team, except it's just me and the AI iterating through the various project stages. Once Grok reviews the roadmap and provides a good prompt, I'll hand that off to Grok Build. Grok Build then creates a code branch in GitLab, makes the changes locally, and waits for me to verify. I'll manually apply the changes to my real device using Android Studio, test it, and then I can move forward from there. One important piece I'm not showing on the slide is a file called claude.md. This file is basically an instruction and context file. It contains all the do's and don'ts for how I want the AI agent to work, plus important project contexts like what the app is, any technologies and dependencies, Git conventions, and so on. It automatically gets read at the start of every session, so the AI agent has a solid baseline before beginning. This helps prevent hallucinations and keeps everything consistent. The nice thing is, even though I originally created it for Claude Code, Grok Build automatically picks it up and uses it as well. If you're dealing with multiple sessions against the same project, this file is a must-have for efficiency. Finally, to tie it all together at a higher level, you can also map this to the typical business roles and providers. In this sprint, I'm utilizing product and program management, as well as engineering and developer functions. And I would be the human provider here, leveraging all these technologies. It's all very straightforward. Everything lines up exactly as you see here on the slide. All right, let's jump into the actual demo. Open up a PowerShell session. I'm gonna switch over to my project folder. I'm gonna fire up Grok Build. Let me see if I can organize these a little bit easier. Okay, let's do this. On the left side here is Grok, the browser-based application. I previously created an Inspector Pool project here, which allows me to set project instructions and context, very similar to what the ClaudeMD file does. Because it's browser-based, there's no install required. You just create an account, set up the project, and any needed connectors. In my case, this would be the connector for my Google Drive. This is all done from within the browser. In the center is Grok Build, which will be implementing the code changes. This is a command line tool. I'm running it in Windows PowerShell. Installation is extremely simple and done from a command line. When launching it, just make sure you do so from within the project folder. On the right is my IDE or Android Studio. Before Agentic tools, I would have to apply code changes manually here. That's no longer necessary now that we have AI applying the changes directly. However, I still use Android Studio to verify changes. Much of the work I'm doing is UI and UX, so I need to see it on a real device or an emulator. Notice here the current version is 1.0.0-beta.4. build 7. Google Play requires the build number to increment with every new upload, so the AI needs to update both the version name and the version code when it makes the changes. Once Grok Build applies those changes, I'll install them on the real device, test, and verify. Now to start this off, I'm going to ask Grok to take a look at this roadmap file and determine what the next sprint should be, then build a prompt for it. And as you can see, it should pick up sprint R. So yeah, so let me do that. Now I can type that in here into this chat bot, or I can just speak to it. So for fun, we're just going to speak. We're going to give it a, let's see here. Grok, let's work on this next sprint. I believe this will be a short and simple coding sprint, so I'll need you to take a look at the project roadmap, see what that next sprint is, then provide a prompt for Grok Build. Make sure you're looking at the project roadmap v5 file. Okay, so it just took dictation there, and so if I submit this, bump version to 1.0.0. Yep, it picked up the correct sprint R. And this is what I'm expecting, an update to the YAML and Gradle file. This all looks fine and good. Here at the bottom, it's built the prompt. We're going to inspect a pool, Flutter Android app, mandatory first step, create a branch. So this is all the prompt that I will drop into, go to this, that I'm going to drop into here. So let's go ahead and just copy this. And then I'm going to paste this right in here and hit enter. And away we go. Sprint R branch proposal per ClaudMD. See, it's using the ClaudMD file. So it's proposing a branch name here and then giving me the steps it's going to do. So I'm just going to scan this really quick and make sure I agree with everything. So then I'm just going to say, looks good, proceed. All right. At this point, it's going to my GitLab project, creating and checking out a new branch to work against, and then it'll make the changes locally. This looks correct. It's looking at a PubSub, or excuse me, a PubSpec YAML file, bumping the version 1.0.0 and +8. So this is syntactically, this is correct. I know this just from doing this exercise so many times over the last year or so. And then it's going to change. I'm looking for the UI change too. Either way, I will test this. So it's not I'm not too overly concerned. And the whole point is to, automate a lot of this process and not to handhold it. Actually, it looks like from that UI note there, it doesn't need to make any explicit changes just for the UI. Okay, so I'm just going to say approve, proceed. And normally this process, there'd be a lot more files done. Some of these sprints I have been very heavy, but I'm not a Flutter developer. Having the AI be able to do the code changes for me, and I can still go and look at the code and look and see if I disagree with something or have any changes. It's easy enough to do. It's now running Flutter Analyze. This is a tool to analyze the code and identify syntax errors or bugs. It's how it confirms it's not introducing any errors or increasing any issue counts, and just basically maintaining clean code base. Okay, increment to complete, step 4.5, Flutter cleanup, preserved, yes. Okay, so at this point, it's made the code changes on that local environment, and so I'm not going to apply those changes using my Android Studio development environment, and I've got my real phone hooked up to it. I'm mirroring it here on the right side, running that build right now. Those code changes are going to come up here. Before it showed that beta version here. So this should change. This should go to just v1 and not beta.4. So I'm just going to close that out. Close all this. And down here on the bottom of this terminal window right here, you can see it's running the build. To launch the app, I'm going to accept it here. It's already getting me my 20-day free trial. If I skip through these screens, everything looks normal. There you go. Version 1.0.0 build 8. Yeah, this looks good. I'm comfortable with that. So at this point, I'm just going to say verified and working as expected. Proceed. Let's see. Now it's giving a summary of what we've done. This looks correct. And it's proposing a commit message here, which is fine. So at this point, I'm going to say approved, commit and push branch, and then wait for me to manually merge. Okay. So now I'm going to jump over to my GitLab project. And if I refresh this, so now it's recognizing that the branch has been pushed. And now I'm going to merge that back to main. So this is just a normal, normal process at this point. And notice there's the commit message that Grok proposed and I approved. I can see the merge is completed. So now I can go back to my Grok Build session and I'm going to ask it to clean up the local. Merge completed. Please clean local and prep for next sprint. And it should finish that up. Again, it's just giving me what we did here. We hit those two files, branches update to main, and I know this because I'm going to exit out of here. And I'm going to git status, and I see I'm on main again. So all good. And when I say clean up the local, I'm asking it to run various git commands that will sync up my local inspector pool project with the GitLab project. This puts my local in a proper state for the next sprint. So now I could go back to this session. I'll spare you the time, but essentially I can just go back to the session and say, okay, this sprint is done. Let's update the project plan, or this project roadmap, which is this. So this would come up and show complete. This is all formatted by Grok. I have it do it all. I don't really type all this stuff out. Again, this is the time-saving stuff, right? But it helps me in the parts of whether it's a product management, program management, developer, QA, architect, designer. AI can take on these roles or functions. And you're just kind of the orchestrator of all this stuff. All right, that brings us to the end of the demo. I hope this gave you a useful look at how these agentic tools can work together in a real development workflow. Thanks for watching.